Sure we can do that. Yes, we can. Awesome. Guys, welcome to today's live session. I'm going to kick things off with a little discussion on how you can return to lifting. This is all of you guys that have sciatic type pain, you've got a herniated disc and you want to get back in the gym. We're going to specifically be using the example of the hip hinge to show how you guys can get back into lifting appropriately and just explain a little bit about the rationale as to how we're going to go about this process. And so first and foremost, if you are struggling with sciatica, we have to acknowledge that we've got an injury down here in the lower back. Most commonly, we're talking about L4-5 and L5-S1, the last two mobile segments of the lumbar spine. And so that's the area that is injured. It's injured in a load-bearing capacity, meaning that it is often through that bearing of load that you experience more pain. The thought of picking something up while you've got raging sciatica is something that you'd much rather avoid. And so understanding that is really important. But equally, understanding that life is a load is equally a very important thing. People often say, well, I couldn't possibly go and do a hip hinge, something like so. My back's bad. I can't do that with weights. Weights often are thought of as, you know, big scary dumbbells, and doing this hip hinge with the load is quite a scary prospect if you've been struggling with really bad sciatica. And so that's something to bear in mind. But understand, a thick jumper is load. Your phone is load. The question is, how much load are we using, and am I capable, is my back capable of tolerating that? And so why do we choose the hip hinge? Why is this one of the exercises that we talk about? Because the ability to separate your hip mobility from your lumbar spine movement is vital, and it's one of the things that is really holding you guys back in your ability to recover. It is the fact that whenever you go to get out of the chair, you round your lower back. It is the fact that whenever we're doing anything, even a simple hamstring stretch, we're rounding the lower back. And so learning through the hip hinge to pass out, separate out the movement of the lumbar spine from the movement of the hips is a vital skill. And so the hip hinge is a great way to do that. And you'll find that you can practice doing the hamstring stretch till you're blue in the face, but it's giving you no long-term benefit. Whereas if you do a hip hinge and you start to learn the ability to do the hip hinge, you'll find your hamstring stretching becomes more capable, more refined, and ultimately more effective as well. And so how do we go about learning the hip hinge? This is the important thing. We do it safely. Now, we teach this in the program, et cetera, and I'll maybe go through some details on that a little bit later on. But fundamentally, we understand that this is the movement that we're trying to achieve. And if we do this, there is only one point in which a perfectly executed hip hinge will give some of you guys trouble, and that is if we're so very weak that as we maintain a neutral position, the actual compressive loading, which increases as we go in this direction, even with a neutral spine, becomes too much. And what are the two guiding principles that we talk about all the time in the program? Aggravation-free and correct choreography. So if you've got a baseline aggravation of your sciatica right now, as you're standing there upright in the neutral position of 2 out of 10 sciatic pain, it's going down the leg a little bit. As we go forwards, you might only be able to go to there, and that's fine. That's where you start. Respecting where you start is important. Trying to get, if you experience an aggravation when you go to here and you're pushing through here just to push through, that is not a smart move. We don't want to be doing that. We want to focus on aggravation-free repetitions. But we learn how to perform the hip hinge. And how can we set this up so it's as safe as possible? We might use a chair, okay? So we're going to stand behind the chair and we're going to run our hands down our thighs. Of course, we've got the core engagement first. We might have used exercises like the dead bug and the marching bridge to learn how to do this more effectively, right? That's why they're in the core 5. That's why they're in the program, not the core 6. And so we might run our hands down the side. Why are we in front of a chair? Because we want to set up our environment such that if we fail, the material costs in my lower back to failing are low. If I decided I want to test my back by going trampolining, the material costs of failing are going to be quite high. If I wanted to test myself in other areas, often you're not consciously testing yourself. You're just picking up your toddler. You're not consciously testing yourself. You're just walking the dog. And you might well get some aggravation. You might not. The dog might chase off in one direction and you're attached to it via the lead and it pulls you and your back can or cannot handle that. That's not a good test. But doing it like this with your hip hinge, slowly coming down here like so. If you feel any pain, you catch yourself, you straighten yourself back up, and you go and debrief with the video that you just took of yourself to learn this hip hinge. So you're building good foundational technique, and after a period of time, you'll feel a little bit more confident doing this, running your hands down your thighs, to the point where you can maybe go a little bit lower, or you just feel more refined in the movement. You've got that aggravation-free range of motion on the hip hinge. And then why is it important that we're running our hands down our thighs? Because some of you guys will instinctively do this. And if I put my hands here or here, it increases the strain. Maybe if you've got back injury, or you've got sciatica right now, and you're not competent at this, you don't test this out right in real time, but those of you that are a bit further on will be able to experience, if I hold a weight now and do my hip hinge like so, if I hold this position here and just hold the weight out further, you can literally feel the increased strain through your spine as you raise your arms out. And that's obviously something that we want to make sure we are not doing. The reason we're choosing the hip hinge, and we also choose the squat as well as two of the fundamentals, is because once you've got the technique down, they are extremely safe and repeatable ways for you to steadily expose your spine to more load. And it is that drives the healing and recovery and regeneration process. And I can see there's a couple of comments here and questions, so I will get into those in a moment. That is a very important point, that we first get good technique with no loading, no extra loading. And it's important to also bear in mind that in spite of the fact that you're practicing this with no extra loading, you're going to be doing daily life with extra loading. You might well have a particularly heavy coat on. You might well have a phone, as I mentioned earlier. You might well be carrying the groceries. You are doing life every day with extra loading, so do not be fearful of load as long as you're using it in a controlled environment. And you're using smart loads, right? If you're being silly and you've only just started doing your rehab, then you're going to play around with a 15 to 30 kilo kettlebell. That's not smart. But if you've tested each integer as you go up to that level, then that is a smart process. So we have to engage with this in a strategic manner. So as we progress on, we then move from a body weight hip hinge, keeping the same range of motion. It's very important that we don't try and change two things at the same time or three things at the same time, because we then don't have any idea of what did what. And we are looking for aggravation within the context of the exercise. So we keep our range the same. One of the things that we sometimes recommend, or often recommend, for example, on the squat is the use of a chair. Sometimes you might use a block. This can work of different heights with different weights. But let's just suppose we're just using our hands for the moment. I'm always going down with my arms straight to this height. So I'm always the same depth. So the depth never changes. Now I might hold a dumbbell and go to the same depth. Okay, 5 kilos is okay. Then I might go up and up and up and up and up and so on and so forth. But I choose maybe the low hold dumbbell because this keeps everything really the same. And now I can swap out this 5 kilo dumbbell. I can swap it out for a 7, a 10, 15, 20 and steadily build up. What we typically suggest is that you guys go from low hold dumbbells into a barbell once you're at around about 30 kilos of load, because the slight change in the mechanics or the holding position of the barbell, which weighs 45 pounds or 20 kilos, can mean that you just want to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room. If you're only used to just about using 20 kilos for your hip hinge, and then you're changing the hold to this position from the previous holding it like you were with the dumbbell, that can just be another variable that we don't want to have to negotiate. So we might build ourselves up to 60 pounds, 30 kilos on our hip hinge, and then we might drop back down briefly to play around with the barbell, where we can now start adding weights a little bit more efficiently, and then quickly build back up to the 30 kilo level and beyond. And that is really the strategy. I'll go into some of the questions now. That is the strategy we use to return to lifting if you've had a back injury, if you've had sciatica, to safely rebuild strength and stability in this area of the lower back. And you're going to get to different stages in that process, and you're going to have different challenges, and that's unique to every individual. And one of the reasons why in the program we have that facility for support, because everyone needs different things at different times. And so going on to some of the questions here, we've got a question from Oscar. Says, which mobility exercise can you recommend for my lower back? My lower back is so tight. One of the important questions you need to ask, Oscar, is if you've done a workout yesterday, do you need a mobility routine? Let's just suppose we've done the squats, the heavy squats the other day. And just an additional comment here. And when I hold 60 kilograms on the hip hinge, it gets heavier on my wrists. What can I do? That's a nice, I'll come back to that question a little bit later on, Oscar, or after this first one. If you are doing a workout and you are working, for example, the squats when they're heavier, for example, the hip hinges, although heavy means different thing, is a different number to different people, it is perfectly reasonable for you to have stiffness in your lower back. That doesn't mean that you need to start doing mobility exercises for the lower back. That means that just like, Oscar, for example, if you'd taken done a ton of bicep reps, I've put the dumbbell back, if you've done a ton of bicep exercises, your bicep is going to feel tight. You don't need to do mobility exercises for the elbow. The bicep just needs to recover, right? And then you'll be free to move again. If you've got DOMs from a couple of days of working out hard, it might be actually, Oscar, you don't need more mobility in your lower back. Because also remember, the mobility of the lumbar spine is very difficult to assess in any meaningful way. And if you're going on feelings of tight, I would suggest that perhaps we're not necessarily managing our training schedule as well as we otherwise could be. It might be that we need to readjust the frequency with which we are working out hard to give our backs time to actually recover between sessions from a muscular point of view. That's not something that needs more mobility, it's something that needs aiding in recovery. This is where things like the massage gun to help get rid of the waste products in that area, towel decompression and bed decompression can play a role, but if it's the kind of tightness that, for example, Oscar, I think you're up to 75 kilos on the squat for 10 reps, looking good, right? But you're very reasonably going to get some tightness in the lower back muscles. That tightness is not something that needs stretching. That tightness is the tightness response as a fatiguing effect in the muscles, and they need to go through that recovery process. And what you'll gradually find is that you adapt to training, and the 75 kilos will no longer give you that feeling of tightness because you're capable of doing 100. But 100 does give you that challenge. And quite equally, if we take this back to the beginning level, when you're starting out, if 10, 15, or 20 kilos is the most you've done, that's the most you're doing. And the difficult thing about this is something that we need to also consider is that your workouts are, generally speaking, especially when we get into where, for example, Oscar was phase 4 kind of level, your workout is the hardest thing you do every day. So it's perfectly reasonable that you're going to feel stiffness and tightness in the musculature after you've worked the musculature really hard. And so having good strategies to manage that stiffness element is really important. Also looking to the lower body to make sure we're managing the stiffness that will develop in the leg muscles after a perfectly normal workout. And Oscar, being in your department, so to speak, fitness trainer, most of your clients, after they've done a workout, they're going to be feeling some tightness, some soreness. That doesn't necessarily mean they need to overtly be stretching those muscles even more, particularly when it comes to the lower back anyway. Sure, if we've got tightness in the hamstrings, we can go about stretching the hamstrings. That's fine. But I think in the earlier stages of recovery or mid stages of recovery, we want to be very mindful of going into doing things like knee hugs and child's pose. Use massage guns. They can help alleviate that tightness that you get from a workout in the lower back a lot more efficiently, with a lot less in the way of downsides, and you'll find that manages things a little bit better. To the other question, this is a very interesting one. There are lots of little strategies that come into play at different times in the recovery process as you guys are getting better from back pain. One such strategy is the double underhand. Now, you might have noticed when I did the hip hinge over here, I was holding on to the barbell with a double underhanded position. This is not something you will typically see in the powerlifting space because, quite frankly, it's weaker. The bar tends to roll out of your hands a little bit more easily, and you need a little bit more forearm strength to do so, as opposed to something like a double overhand grip, which you will frequently see, or a split grip, which I absolutely hate for reasons of it just makes everything asymmetrical. Now my shoulder's going forwards on the one side, forwards on the one side, backwards on the other. It's just a bit unpleasant. And so the reason that we choose some of these options is because, especially for individuals with a background in training, there is a quirk that we need to consider, especially if you've got a background in training. You will have a degree of muscle memory. And what that means is, as you start to get back into training again, mentally you're starting to get really excited, and physically your body loves it. And so you will find that your muscles get stronger and stronger, and they really start to adapt nicely to that training. But muscles respond and adapt in matters of weeks when we're using the appropriate levels of strain. The ligaments, the discs themselves adapt in a matter of months. So how does this relate into the fact that Oscar's struggling to hold on when he's doing his hip hinges? Because he's got a weakness in the forearms. His forearm strength is not quite there. And so his forearm strength is holding him back. This has the nice benefit of preventing him from scaling the load a little bit too fast. It gives his spine a bit of chance to catch up while his muscles in his forearms are holding him back from being able to progress the weight further. So the answer here, Oscar, is keep plugging away at that 60 kilos and your arms are going to get stronger. I would be extremely cautious And what I mean by that is I would not recommend using grips or lifting straps or anything like that to circumvent the limitation that your forearm strength is offering. It's only going to be a plus for you to build stronger forearms as you're going through this process, stronger wrists as you're going through this process. And so make sure you don't kind of skip ahead, Oscar. I think that's a good thing. Pay attention. Your forearms and wrists are the weak link in this particular scenario, and so they will get stronger over time. And Oscar's saying he does the same underhand grip. Oscar, I almost guarantee, if you took a double overhand grip and a bit of chalk, you'd probably be able to bump that up to 65 or 70. But I don't think that's the right move. I think you're better off giving yourself time to change in those muscles. Armin has said, doing squats on wedges for increased ankle height, is this cheating or better to reduce load on the lower back? This is a fantastic question. Because it gives us the opportunity to talk about something. You guys will see a lot of the wedges, the heel elevations when doing squats. There's a plate. I don't know if we have one, but we'll choose this bit here. So you're squatting like so, or essentially you're just squatting on your toes, right? By doing this, it allows me to stay more upright in the squat than if I have my heels down. Why are we doing a squat? Think back to this. Okay, we're not doing it for knee rehab. You'll see a lot of that stuff in the knees over toes thing. That's not to say it's not a problem. Well, it's not to say it is a problem, sorry. But why are we doing squats? It all comes down to thinking about what you're doing and why you're doing it. You're doing a squat to act as a movement that you are ingraining into your mind so that you do it more subconsciously. Now, unless you plan on wearing high heels all day, ditch the wedges. Because yes, we're trying to improve our squat, but the reason is to improve our movement patterns out there in the real world, to make them more subconscious. If you're always squatting on a slant board, you're not practicing things with the applicability to daily life. You need to know when your calf mobility issues are going to start to prevent you from being able to go any lower and your lower back's having to kick in. The reason that you go up on your toes is as I go down, I get to a point where I can't go any lower without rounding my lower back. But if I go up on my toes, like so, I can now go lower and keep my back up. So I'm getting a cheat, which is preventing me from getting a true representation of how I'm moving in my daily life. Again, if you plan on wearing high heels all day, fair enough, but most of you won't. And so, I'm being a bit facetious there, you guys get the idea. Ditch the wedges. Ditch the wedges. It's not reducing the load on the lower back, I would argue, other than by a function of you get to stay more upright, but you're making it less applicable to daily life. We want to make our exercises as close as possible to the thing that we're going to do in real daily life. And so make sure we're not inadvertently robbing ourselves of that important ability to transfer some of the skill we're developing in our workouts to the 16 or 18 hours a day that we're not doing our back rehab. Danielle has said, just signed up to the program. Awesome, Danielle. Make sure you get stuck in. Go steadily through the material. Just a tip for those of you that are newer to the program or have just joined. I know I've said it before. Make sure you dig in. There's two areas that you want to pay attention to. Number one, you've got the core relief work, and you've got the phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, called core, phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. The core relief work is your relief-based practices. You do those a couple of times a day, as per this strategy material. The phase 1, 2, 3, 4 is your rehab work. You do that once a day only. However, when you are starting, there are strategy videos in each of the sections of the program, the main sections, core relief, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. Those strategy videos tell you how to go about the process of moving through the phase, of doing the things that you need to do in the phase. So be it your relief exercises like the towel decompression, be it the dead bug exercise, the squats, how to use the tutorials, how to use the live workouts, how to know when you should move to the next phase. All of that information is in the strategy material. That means you're watching videos before you even start doing the exercises. That means you know what you're supposed to be doing rather than just jumping into the exercises and doing, well, whatever happens, right? And so then you go on to the tutorial videos. The tutorial videos, you work with those each individually. So it might be, for example, after you've watched the posture video and you've watched the core engagement video, you're going on to the dead bug. One of the examples of the dead bug, which every single human being can do, is lying in bed. You might not be able to do it well, but you're at least lying in bed. And you might say, well, I can't get out of bed. It's like, fine, do this exercise in bed, right? And we're just learning to engage the core and relax, engage the core and relax. As you can see, you can hardly see anything happening because it is so very easy. Every human being can do it. And then we might have another variation where we're just doing this one. Okay, that was okay. I could do that without aggravation. Then, okay, we're going to come up to the starting point. Then we're going to maybe do some toe taps, right? Then we're going to do some half reps. You get the idea. You figure out which variation of those you can do without aggravation and which you can't. Once you've figured out you can't do that, you don't keep doing that or try harder versions. Once you've figured out I can't do a half rep of a dead bug, maybe we should have tried a little bit easier first. And probably if we suggest instead, start with the easiest one and then build up from there until the point at which you feel like you're getting some aggravation during the exercise. Make a note of specific which point you're getting the aggravation. This is very important. Too many times people are saying, oh, I feel it right here, this point here, right? Or just here, or just here. That's not really relevant. What is relevant is precisely which point in the exercise do you feel. Is it here? Is it as the second leg came up? Is it as the leg goes out? Is it as the leg goes out to here, or here, or here, or here? Is it rep number 7? That's the point where you guys need to get into the granular detail. Make a note. We have checkups, checkpoints along the way. So you make a note. I could do version 3 and I got pain after 7 reps or something like that. Also know that as you start the rehabilitation exercises and you feed them into the live workouts, you might not be doing all 5 sets. You might do set 1, set 3, set 5. And then you build on from there. But all of that is explained within the program. So just get stuck into that, Danielle. Thank you, Secret Team, for the comment. And just get stuck in. Nirava said, I've been tingling in my legs since yesterday. When I do sit down on a chair and on the floor for a few hours to test tolerance, when I do the floor towel decompression, I get tingling. Nirav, check doing the towel decompression on the bed instead of on the floor, and also upload a pic from the side with your finger on your belly button to check it's in the right place. And it's, do we get it immediately or do we get it after a slight delay? The other thing I would look at in here, and definitely give us an update in the members group, saying I've had tingling in my legs since yesterday. Let us know what happened yesterday. And I would also say, you know, sitting on the floor for a few hours to test tolerance, I probably wouldn't be doing that, to be completely honest. Let me know some more detail on the circumstances in a post on the Facebook group, and we can get into that in more detail. YPNXZGE said, please can you give us instructions on the exercises after spinal fusion to prevent adjacent segment disease? Everything we've been talking about here. Guys, if you are new to the page here, definitely check out the link down here. I'll post it in the chat. That gives you a link to the program. We're focusing on spine stability type exercises. We're focusing on exercises where the spine does not move, learning that ability to stabilize the spine so that you can effectively protect the areas around the site that has had the surgical intervention. So let's just say it's L5S1. We want to make sure we can protect the spine. We can't protect L4, L5. We can't protect L5S1. We can protect the lumbar spine. That's all you can do. And that's what we're doing with our core stabilization exercises, with our neutral spine exercises. We are stabilizing the midsection effectively. Storyteller has said, how to progress in hip hinge with getting tolerance in the tissue because I can do reps with weights, but I have severe sciatica and I can't bend over. How do I progress slowly and gradually? You get to the point where you can do the repetition without aggravation. So if that means you use no weight, you find out what does not cause aggravation. So is it here? Is it here? Maybe we've got this range. And then we progress from there, but you are not looking to go through aggravation. You progress slowly and carefully with hip hinge repetitions that do not aggravate the severe sciatica. What have you said here? Tingling, no pain, worse than tingling. Nirav, not really one way or another. I'd say it's one is worse in terms of the tingling with no pain and tingling with pain. One is worse to the degree that it's a more unpleasant symptom, but it's not really an indication of what's going on in the lumbar spine in terms of like, is one signifying a disc bulge of 5 mil and one signifying a disc bulge of 8 mil? There's not really that conclusion that you can draw from that kind of commentary. Oscar said no gloves. Yes, no gloves. I mean, I don't think gloves are the end of the day, at the end of the world. They may give you a little bit of extra grip, maybe like chalk, perhaps, but certainly no straps. It's straps that I'm most interested in. Gloves, you've still got to hold the bar, Oscar, when you're doing your weights. And you're still training the forearms to get an adaptation there. So I don't think they're as bad, gloves or chalk, but certainly straps or other grips that are stronger, I think I would definitely leave those out. Tara said, I'm finally recovering from flu. And guys, yeah, if you've got a cold, if you're feeling unwell, aside from the lower back, you got to focus on getting better. That's the most important thing. Focus on getting better first, and then you can go and push back on with our rehabilitation work. I've hurt my wrist, frustratingly irritated my lower back from persistent coughing. This is one of the challenges, right? It is one of the challenges. People sometimes comment and say, how do I sneeze without aggravating my lower back? Don't sneeze is the answer, and that's not an answer that we can really fulfill on effectively. Tara said, what's the best way to work back towards restarting rehab after 2 weeks off? I always think a discovery workout is quite nice. A discovery workout taking very conservative weights, Tara, and not, so for example, let's just suppose we were at 20 kilos, just for round numbers, before we got unwell with the flu, on our squat or hip hinge, either or. The same would be true with both in terms of what we would do. Our first workout may just be like body weight, 3 kilos, 5 kilos, 7 kilos, 10 kilos, something like that. And maybe over the next week, you steadily build back up to test to the point where you are finishing one of those sessions on your previous high. 2 weeks is not a very long time, generally speaking. Yes, because our body's been working overtime to fight the infection and get better again, it's going to use some of the resources, but we should get back up there pretty quickly. Just don't rush. Just don't rush is the biggest thing. There's no need to rush at all. Use a discovery workout, start conservative, do 1 or 2 or 3 sessions, and by the time we get to the 3rd session, we might be looking at indulging ourselves with our previous load, pre-having the flu. Tara said, I have no idea, but wanted to check. I thought it'd be good to share too. Yeah, no, it definitely is. As we get into the winter months, the colder months, this topic will come up over and over again. It always does. And it's something that we want to be strategic about. Some of you guys, you've been working so hard to get better. You really do get anxious when you have the flu. You're like, oh, but I still want to train. Oh, but I don't feel up to it. Oh, you know, and you tie yourselves in knots. Please don't. Focus on getting better. Get rest, get good food on board, plenty of hydration, all that kind of stuff, good sleep. Get better from the flu, give your body what it needs, and then you can get back on the horse. Remember, you guys underestimate the benefit of the technical improvement that you've made. You don't forget that. It's just like riding a bike. That's the biggest thing that you need to overcome in the early instances of recovery, is actually overcoming that inability to correctly coordinate yourself. And whether you've had a flu for a couple of days or a little bit longer, you don't forget how to perform the exercises correctly. You might lose a bit of strength, but you don't forget how to perform them correctly, which means that you'll be able to get back into it just fine. Just give your body the grace it needs to be able to build back up the loads. Secret Team said, farmer's carry can help with forearm grip and strength. You shouldn't have to strap up to do lightweight like that. Yeah, farmer's carry is a good one to add in, but I would always suggest farmer's carry later on. Oscar's at that right kind of level. But if you're early on in the program, farmer's carries, don't worry so much about doing those. And I would suggest if you're using the farmer's carry later on, so like, for example, Oscar here, we're up at, I think it was 75 kilos on the squat for 10 reps, 60 kilos on the hip hinge. Use asymmetrical farmer's carries. They are actually, there's a video on them in the program. They're great, but one arm, right? Because that way you're not testing spinal load tolerance, but you are testing your grip strength. So it's a way of you making a challenge of your grip strength and the core, because to doing the farmer's carry, holding a dumbbell in one arm, like so, you know, and holding yourself square, so your core's working as you're doing this, you've got good posture as you're doing this, and I'm training my grip strength here, but I'm only using 20 or 30 kilos in one hand, so the spinal loading is going to be less than if I was doing double arm, right? And that allows, and if I hold weight in this arm, the only thing that I'm doing is just loading the spine more. I'm not training this arm's grip strength any better. So I may as well do this, and then switch over to this. That's going to be a smarter strategy, and it allows you to train a parameter, grip strength, whilst not overly taxing the spine, because you've taxed the spine when you did your actual workout with your squat or your hip hinge. What else have we got? Also, when standing in getting the tingling in the right leg, I have a session today for testing the RDLs. Should I still do that session? I think just a little more exploration about the recent change, Nirav, is going to be helpful. But if you are getting the tingling, if it's at a baseline level, a very low grade level, I'd feel okay to test the RDLs. But remember, we're looking for aggravation-free reps here. Aggravation-free. Oscar said, how bigger the towel for the decompression should be? It should be a normal bath towel. So like we typically use this. Here's the size of the towel. That's a reasonable size. Fold it in half. Roll it up. But guys, if you're in doubt, just post in the group. Oscar, just post in the group with regards to the towel. You know, about that big. When you lie over it, it flattens a little bit, so just bear that in mind. but that's the kind of size we want. What else have we got here? Storyteller said, how to progress the hip hinge. Oh, we've done that one. Sinner said, hi Mike, it's my 3rd week doing the rehab and I'm feeling better. Awesome. What are your thoughts on chiropractic adjustments? Great question. Thank you, Sin. Whether it's a chiropractic adjustment, whether it's a physio treatment, whether it's a osteopathic appointment, an injection, whatever it is, I think those things can be leveraged if you're discussing sincerely with your practitioner, whatever they're doing, and asking you, how are you going to help me with my recovery? What role is this playing in me getting better from my sciatica, my back pain, my herniated disc, whatever it is? And it should be focused around the injury specifically, and maybe some commentary on the symptoms. Because sometimes it'll be, well, I'm not really doing anything for the injury, but I'm helping you with the symptom management in a way that doesn't make the problem worse. That's a valid answer, right? So what the chiropractor might say is, do you know what? We can't really do anything, like, unless you've got like an IED table to help, or laser, like we've got in the other room as well. They can't really do anything to L5S1. Now, they might do something like flexion or flexion distraction that I would say is not a good idea. They might do that. But what they will often say is, do you know what? We can't do anything to L5S1. But what we can do is get your thoracic spine working a bit better, the upper lumbar spine working a little bit better. We can get your neck alignment a little bit better. We can do some adjustments to open out the rib cage. We can do some work on the hips, knees, and ankles to make all of that work better so that it can take the strain off the lumbar spine, i.e., the other areas of the system are working better, so the lower back is having to compensate less. In the last 2 days, I've had 2 people contact us about exactly the same issue. They had knee issues of varying degrees, and that preceded the back injury. Because so many of you guys, we have this knee injury or something else, and then the back has to compensate. So the role of the chiropractor or the osteopath or the physio, it's really not so much as, is chiropractic good for me, or osteopathy good for me? It's, is this specific chiropractor going to help me? Because there's more variation within the profession than there is across the profession, I would argue, and especially with osteopathy and chiropractic. So they can help if they can help, if you know what I mean. And so they can work on those other areas. But they need to be able to communicate that to you specifically to show that they're actually thinking about these things and they're not just going about it in kind of a more mindless way. Now, they might have a system that they use that helps and a way of doing things, and that's perfectly fine, but they should be able to verbalize how they're helping you. For example, if the chiro works on your thoracic spine and your neck, and you're driving to work every day or whatever it may be, when you're pulling out of your driveway and you're checking your blind spot, if your neck works better, then your lower back doesn't have to crank round every time you're checking your blind spot. That is a benefit because by your neck and thoracic spine working better as a result of the adjustments they've done, loosening things off, that means that you've got more mobility through this area, so your lumbar spine isn't having to crank round when you're checking your blind spot, or when you're driving, or when you're doing other things. So that's the kind of the way in which those kind of treatments, hands-on treatments, can really help you. And they might have some other tech that they're using as well, so you know that would potentially play in. So it's something that goes alongside it, and a lot of the members will have, depending on budgets, depending on accessibility, depending on how local the various treatment options are. We'll do a bit of massage, a bit of physio, a bit of chiro, a bit of osteo, generally hands-on type treatments to support them as they go through the process. It builds on a good foundation of knowledge and rehab and education. It can just help you make life a little bit easier for yourself. Zeno has said, hello, I work as a package mailman with sciatica, L5S1, herniation. What would you suggest to recover? I guess being super conscious in every movement and keep doing the exercises after work. Thanks. One of the important things is we acknowledge that we're having to do some things that are not necessarily ideal for our lower back every day as part of our occupation, but basically everyone has that same sort of challenge. The only difference is the nuance of challenges. So we acknowledge that we're doing lots of bad things every day. Some of those bad things we can change, right? We can make them better. Some of them only to a degree, and others of them we can actually eliminate them altogether. And there's a bunch of things that you're doing that are bad every day that you just have to do anyway. The good news is your body is really quite remarkable, and it will get better if you just do the best you can in that environment. A little bit of guidance goes a long way. Understanding the neutral spine, trying to carry yourself a little bit better, being thoughtful about these things makes a world of difference. And then we acknowledge that because we're doing a lot of bad stuff every day, we do our core relief work. That's things like the towel decompression, the bed decompression, the contrast bathing, lower body stretching, massage, going back, all of that kind of stuff is not particularly time consuming, right? We've got some routines in the members area, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, that kind of time frame to do a little relief-based routine. And then we're spending our time working hard on the actual stuff that moves the needle, which is our rehabilitation work, learning our exercises, building strength and resilience into our lower back. And if you do that, Zeno, you're going to get better. Orange has said, hello, I just had a microdiscectomy and I'm feeling better. Biggest issues were digestion and the toilet. Yeah, so that probably explains why we've had the surgery, maybe under a bit more of, not emergency circumstances, but maybe. The most important thing we understand is when we have a microdiscectomy, what's happened is we've had this bit removed. This bit has been removed. The injury, which is the annulus fibrosus, has failed, which is why the material has been able to bulge out to the side here. That has not changed. So while some people really do notice a big difference in their symptoms, the back strength has not changed fundamentally. Healing takes time. So the opportunity for Orange and others in this scenario, I know there are many, is to start to rebuild the strength and resilience of the lower back using exercises that focus on stabilizing the spine and build from there. Tara said, thank you, I wish I was 20 kilos. You'll get there. You'll get there. It's just a case of when. Olu said, almost missed this session due to being in the gym doing hip hinges, listening live from the gym. Awesome, Olu. Hopefully you're doing some good form. It's giving you some ideas to really refine that today. But that's one of the things, guys. One of the things we wanted to do with the program is make it accessible for anyone. So if you want to go and work out in the gym, you want to do your rehab in the gym, even if you're doing the basic stuff, you can do that. If you want to do it at home, you can do it at home. If you don't want to do it in the gym, you can scale it at home. And if you want to do it in the gym, you can scale it there too. Most important thing is that it gets done. That's the most important thing. Too often there's this reluctant start because, oh, well, I need that to be done. I need this to be done. I need to be done. I can't do that. The most important thing, rehab doesn't work unless it gets done. And it needs to be then done correctly, right? That's important too. ABC said, do you think it was necessary to get an MRI? If I went to the doctors, I think it would be the next step. There are two things to say about MRIs for lower back pain. An MRI is never done on its own. There's always a motivation, which means there's always an understanding of symptoms, there's a case history, there's an understanding of the problem in of itself. And so if you're a qualified person, even if you're not a qualified person, right? A lot of you guys don't have a qualification, you're not an osteopath, you haven't done a degree or anything like that, and I got a bad back, right? You know there's a back problem there. But you understand that if you've got a load-bearing issue, and you're getting symptoms in the lower back, buttocks, or down the leg, you've got a back injury. The MRI is going to tell you the nuance of that back injury. It's going to tell you that it's a disc bulge of this much magnitude on the left-hand side. It might tell you there's some facet joint inflammation. It might tell you there's a bit of SIJ inflammation. It might tell you this, that, and the other, right? But it doesn't change your rehab. The MRI can be used and should be used, but is often not used, as a really helpful educational tool, not only for the practitioner to get a better understanding of things, but also for you to get a better understanding of your spine. And it's also a great educational tool to say, hey, look, John, you've got a lot of degeneration down at the L5-S1. You can see that it's tucked under, although you don't get as much usable information on the alignment side of things from the MRIs. We can see that it's looking very straight. We can see there's a big pocket of significant degeneration at L5-S1, but actually the rest of the spine is looking pretty good. Do you happen to spend a lot of time sitting every day? You can see that it's starting to play a role in the degenerative change and strain that's developing in this area. We've got to start to strengthen that, change some of what we're doing, how we're doing it on a daily basis to alleviate the inappropriate, consistent barrage of strain on the L5-S1. It can be used to inform and help you guys understand your own body and also understand the magnitude of things. And actually, sometimes people get really disheartened when they have an MRI and there's nothing significant on there. They're like, yeah, but why am I in so much pain? It's like, no, that's a good thing. You can have a minor back strain where you have the MRI and it doesn't show that much of significance and still have terrible pain that's been managed badly and been going on for years. Because unfortunately, that's the way this happens for so many people. So the MRI is a valuable tool, but it certainly should not be cause for delaying doing the rehabilitation work. Oscar said, can you do that on leg day? Oscar's also said on squat day. Okay. I think we're referencing the farmer's carries. I think it's something to feed in potentially. You definitely could add it in on a squat day or a hip hinge day. I'd probably say on a hip hinge day, it probably wouldn't be as good because you're going to fatigue your grips, or you could use it after, I suppose, when your grips are already fatigued. On a squat day, you might actually find that it might be something, and this is something, Oscar, you're going to have to test and play around with, of course, but you might find that actually it's quite a nice little warm-up, right? Obviously with not too much load to start with, get comfortable with it, but actually when you're walking with that thing in your hand on one side only, and you're really doing it conscientiously and really bracing your core, it kind of fires the core up quite nicely. So you might find it's actually a nice kind of semi warm up, like you do your dead bugs, your marching bridges or something like that, and you do a couple of those just to really get everything fired up. That could be something worth considering. Mina said, I have DDD on at L5S1. I heard before that jumping rope is not a good exercise for me. It's not a good exercise to start out with, certainly. Like that's not rehab. That's not rehab. Just jumping rope is not rehab. That being said, long term, why do we want to do jumping rope? If you want to do it from a cardiovascular point of view, I would probably put it in a similar category to running, right? Running is just a series of bang, 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 bang. So is jumping on the jump rope. If we're being reasonable, if we're being conscientious about how we're doing it, and we're later on in the rehabilitation process, we've built some good strength on things like the squats and hip hinges, then exposing the spine to that kind of loading or impact, done within aggravation-free limits, done in a strategic manner, could potentially have a role. I don't think it doesn't have a role, but it's not good to do while you're in the throes of having an injury, while the disc is vulnerable, because it's not very scalable. It's difficult, or rather, it's difficult to appropriately dose that in a way that you can scale. Whereas a squat and hip hinge with a load is much easier, much more reliable. Danielle said, on Friday, when sitting, I got a twinge in the right-hand side, had leg and back pain since, as well as ongoing problems on the left side. I can't get comfortable unless I'm laying down, and I don't want to be laying down all the time. Yeah, when we're in the early stages, before we've started rehab, like in this case, it's very common for something silly to set things off. We don't need to read too much into those things other than we already knew we had a weak back, a vulnerable back, and we've just exploited it again. In this case, it gets stuck into the rehab. You're going to have those bumps along the way, especially in the early stages of the program, right? If you think about it like this, if you are so very poorly coordinated with a very inferior ability to activate and stabilize this section of your body, that you can't even do something like this without your back moving, arching your spine and getting some pain, or doing something like this without your spine moving all over the place, your tummy rising, you losing engagement. Is it any wonder that we're getting aggravation from silly little things like that? It is. It should be a wake-up call. In a good way, right? It's frustrating on the one hand, but it's good on the other, because now we realize that, you know, I've got a lot of weakness there. No wonder I'm struggling with back pain, and I've got to build it. And you will build it. And while you're building it, you'll still have flare-ups from one moment to the next. But the further you progress with the rehabilitation, the less frequently you have the flare-ups, the more stress and strain will be required to overwhelm you to the point where you have a flare-up, the better you'll do. And guys, just because I can see a lot of comments are over there on the TikTok, specifically you guys, if you need a little bit more help, especially if you're one of the members, go over to the YouTube channel, because I've got the comments here are much more easy for me to manage. TikTok just flies and it just goes crazy. So it's much easier for me to see them over here, and then I can get to all your comments. I will come over to TikTok when I get a chance, but there's a lot in the pipeline now. Brona said, I sat too long on a very soft chair. Too long. How long was too long, Brona? Should I go to the gym for a lighter workout? For a pump in the back? It's the right-hand side, feel a pinch. Already did heat and ice, but still have the pinch. Brona, I definitely do some bed decompression, but actually going into the gym and just doing a little bit of a light, one of the light workouts wouldn't be a bad idea. You know, one of the squat, maybe the squat workout would be best. Nice and controlled. Set 1, 3, 5, something like that. Maybe if you feel comfortable as you start getting into it, you could do set 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, but on a lighter weight, just to test things. And then when you get home, you do some care of self stuff. You do your bed decompression, you do your towel decompression, you do your massage gun on that lower back and buttocks and hamstring area. That should really help you settle it down pretty quick. Stanko said, while working in an office, what should be a good balance of sitting versus standing while working at a desk? Generally speaking, trying to change position every 20 minutes or so is pretty reasonable. That being said, some of you guys are going to find standing a lot more tolerable than sitting, which makes complete sense. And so we've had people that, you've got to find what you can do. A nice example was one of the guys, he'd stand up, just thinking because it popped into my head, he'd stand up for around about 50 minutes, and then in the last 10, he'd sit down for about 5, 7 minutes, something like that, and then he'd do some of the kind of light exercises just to re-engage everything, and then get back into the standing position, because he found standing a lot more comfortable, a lot less strenuous on the lower back. But if you're sitting, it's a little bit more of a challenge, because the reason I'm hesitant to say a specific example, because this is one of those things which is very individual. I don't think there's really any problem you standing for a longer period of time, but some of you guys will find sitting is actually really comfortable for a longer period of time, and that's a problem. So in that scenario, I'd force yourself to get up a little bit more frequently, change positions a little bit more frequently. Whereas if you're someone that finds standing a bit more comfortable, then I'd suggest that standing for a longer duration can be okay. The only thing you've got to watch out for on the standing is when you're standing all day, your leg muscles are not moving. And so you do get a little bit stiff. So doing some stretching, some lower body stretching is going to be really helpful to just open those out a little bit more. And you might do that every 30 minutes, every 45 minutes, something like that. And a little massage gun at the end of the day, just to work over those muscles, can be quite helpful as well, because the stiffness in that area from standing all day is going to be a negative for your lower back when you start sitting down, because now your hips are going to be a little more stiff from being stood all day, and that's going to translate into the lumbar spine. Oscar said, can I do farmer's carry-on squat there? I think we already did that one. Yes, Oscar, but you've got to feed it in steadily. That's a variable. So we don't add in farmer's carries and a new weight on the squats. We add in one thing at a time. And I'd suggest, Oscar, going back to what we just said earlier at the start, I've got some back stiffness from the muscles. Check that, give your body time a little bit to adapt to the new level of training before we're just adding more and more stuff, right? Or if we're going to add that stuff, just acknowledge that you're going to get the stiffness, right? And the stiffness is not something that needs stretching. It's just a sign that you're working yourself pretty hard. And I know because of the job, you're going to be on your feet a little bit more. You've got to be mindful of that. Some of you guys like working out. You need to be mindful that it's not just about working out. Working out is half of the equation, maybe even less than half of the equation. Adequate rest and recovery is the other part of the equation, and you've got to make sure you're not overcooking it. A lot of people fall into that category. So be careful of that, Oscar. Something to bear in mind. It's something to bear in mind irrespective of a back injury. I think it was Dorian Yates that spoke a little bit about this. He's talking about if he was feeling that he wasn't getting the results he wanted in the gym, and I might be getting this completely wrong, it might have been someone else, but an influential large bodybuilder, talking about making progress in that department. He said if he wasn't getting results, contrary to what most more beginners would do, and I certainly would be in the category of doing this in years gone by, they would do more. He'd actually say, no, I'm going to factor in a bit more rest, a bit more, I have a day off the gym. Give my body a bit more time to recover. Because the workout breaks you down, you then need to recover in between workouts. And I think most people, especially those that aren't as experienced, and someone like that is working out at a very high level, they often misunderstand that actually recovery is, if not more important than the workouts, equally important to the workout that you're doing. And the same thing is going to go for you guys recovering from lower back pain. Don't underestimate when you're doing the right rehab. Now, sometimes people are just doing all rest and no work, right? That's a different problem. But later on, as we get to what we would call phase 4, you're actually working out in the gym again, and you're trying to push yourself, and you kind of feel like you're hitting a wall. There's a couple of you guys Oscar, want to evaluate, reflect on this. Nirav, reflect on these ideas yourself. Are you running the risk of actually you're pushing yourself too hard, and we need to slightly adjust the training frequency here to give our body time to actually recover? Because as those of you guys that have trained in the past, as you start to get back into training again, the enthusiasm, the excitement gets in there, and we could potentially maybe go a bit further than we should be doing in terms of the intensity of our training. I know this is something that's massively an issue in jiu-jitsu anyway, with people constantly training injured. Not good. I would definitely myself fall into that category from time to time. What kind of idiot tears both meniscus on a Tuesday and then competes on the Saturday? Not a smart move. Not a smart move. So I've definitely been there. And made that error. So hopefully you guys can avoid that error if you're learning this way. Mina said, at the moment, hip hinges are my main exercise since the squats were aggravating my knee pain. Mina, I would also still be doing a little bit of squats to make sure that we're exploring where that aggravation is and understanding where that limit is still, although you'd obviously be doing the squats at a lower intensity. I also wanted to ask your opinion on jumping rope as a side workout alongside the program. I think, Mina, as long as you've got a knee issue, I wouldn't be doing the jump rope. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Until the knees are significantly stronger, through the squats specifically, I wouldn't be adding the jump rope in with that consideration. Currently in phase 4, been getting some pain in my heels every time I do the hinges. I'm not sure if it's due to my form technique or just my body adjusting to the weight. It might, depends on exactly. Mina, I would definitely get a video into the group of your current hip hinges, and also you pointing to precisely where in the heel you are noticing this, right? Because sometimes the heel, we mean in here, at the base of the foot, and it doesn't help that I've got black on, in here at the base of the heel. That is potentially the attachment site of the plantar fascia. It might be that because we're doing our our hip hinges bare feet, stretching out that plantar fascia, and sometimes if we're not balancing ourselves correctly and we're kind of toppling forwards a little bit, our toes are pressing in and we're kind of doing that, and that's not as good. We want to make sure that one of the things that can really help, Mina, it might be worth trying this, lift your toes. So you stand there, lift your toes up off the floor and then do the hip hinge. Then do the hip hinge. That can make an instant difference, and if that does, it's probably because you're going over onto your toes a little bit too much. You're not getting your balance quite right on those hip hinges. But definitely do a little update in the members area, pointing to precisely where you're feeling it, and try that hip hinge with the toes elevated first, obviously on a few lighter weights, just to test it out so we can get more of an understanding of where you're at, and then I can comment accordingly there. What else have we got here? We've done that one. I had DDD and was previously advised not to jump rope, but I've been mostly symptom-free lately. What do you think? Mina, hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, or if there's any other questions, add it to that little post in the members area as well, please. And then we can hash it out over there as well. Madeleine has said, I said to my chiro about your program. I showed her your videos, and she said to rebuild strength and resilience will take me 2 to 3 years, and I will waste my time and money. I'm not sure what the point of that comment is, Madeleine. I'm not quite sure what they would be suggesting as an alternative, right? Are they saying not to rebuild your strength and resilience? Are they making the statement that you having your current levels of weakness are appropriate? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what exactly they would be saying in that scenario. Because one thing's for sure, the chiro is doing precisely this much to increase your strength and resilience. Because they can't. They can't. Unless you're doing rehabilitation with them, in which case these timeframes are biological timeframes that are not changeable by one chiro to one physio, to one osteo, to one online program, to whatever. So something worth bearing in mind. And I would certainly say 2 to 3 years. They probably aren't very experienced in doing this kind of rehab work if they're suggesting 2 to 3 years. To get to certain levels, it might take you longer, sure, right? To get to certain levels will take you years. But that's a different thing, right? To get to, for example, squatting or hip hinging 100% of your body, for some of you guys, it will take 2 to 3 years, maybe longer. That's not to say you have to get to that point before you feel pain-free. That is a long-term target. We have short, medium, and long-term targets. So that might be where they've got the 2 to 3 years figure from, perhaps. ABC said, is there a type of chair you'd recommend? I have a standard office chair for working out from home. Is it fine to use a cushion on it, or should my back be flush against the back of the chair? One of the mistakes that a lot of people make, I'll just use this orange thing because this isn't a cushion, this is a neck pad, but a lot of people will put the cushion, you see I can't do this with this chair. A lot of people will put their cushion behind their pelvis. The lumbar spine is here, right, for reference. So lumbar spine, my lower lumbar spine is where the femoral is now, right? Not down here. And so a cushion, I wouldn't use a cushion. There's no need to use a cushion. A small rolled up towel, smaller than this, is what we'd normally suggest. Just so you know, guys, look, you're sat on your sitting bones. If you are putting a towel or a cushion behind you, you are supporting nothing other than pushing your sacrum forward, which will help you sit badly. So you need to sit your bum into the back of the chair, and the towel goes here, not here. Your bum is sat here, and there's probably a bit of cushioning, so it's here, right? So just bear in mind, lots of people put the towel way too low, way too low. Gongzwo Kwang. Sorry to butcher that. I was doing my best. Should I do hip hinges and squats while having sciatica limiting me from standing straight? Big question here. I'll put it straight back to you guys. Should you do anything, or are you doing anything while sciatica is limiting you from standing straight? Almost certainly, you got up this morning, got out of bed, and your sciatica was limiting you standing straight, but you went to the toilet, you went to the bathroom, you went downstairs, you had coffee, you had breakfast, you got dressed, you went out to work, maybe you stayed at home because you're not able to get to work, and you're doing all that every day in spite of sciatica not allowing you to stand straight. None of that is improving your back health. None of that is improving your ability to move around. None of that is productive with regards to you getting better from your sciatica. However, are you going to do the hip hinges perfect? No. Are you going to do the squats perfect? No. Are you going to learn how to do them perfect? Yes. Are you going to try your best? Yes. Are you going to find what you can do aggravation-free? Yes. You should still be doing that. you should still be doing that. So you get up there and you get your squat out, and maybe you're doing a squat, and maybe you're only going like this, you're holding on for support. Maybe you're doing your hip hinge, like that, trying to avoid aggravation. You're focusing on a neutral spine. Maybe you're doing dead bugs, marching bridges, but you should be doing your rehab, and you should be shooting for aggravation-free reps. Because if you've got sciatica and it's limiting you from doing lots of things every day, look at what you're still doing every day. And invariably, if not always, it's significantly more strenuous than careful, controlled rehabilitative exercises done with the intent of improving your technique and ability to stabilize your spine. Because the great thing about the technique side of things is if you are sincerely going about trying to improve your ability to perform these exercises, your technique improves in a matter of repetitions, which can be a matter of seconds if you're doing it properly. Your technique can improve in a matter of minutes, days, hours. While the other changes that need to take place take longer, you can seriously make significant improvements in your ability to perform these movements, and therefore your ability to get out of bed in the morning, your ability to get off the toilet seat in the morning, your ability to go down the stairs in the morning. Immediately, almost immediately, you can improve. So you may as well learn those things because it will make it less exhausting. We've said here, I only feel pain while seating. Standing hunched over is exhausting. How do I improve? Start with the rehab work. Broner said, Mike, no pain in the lower back, just right side under the bra strap. Broner, I'd be interested to see whether it's actually your neck that you've irritated. If you've been slapped, because this is what happens, right? We don't think about, and Broner, we've spoken about this before, about the TV. You know, remember TV being over here, sat like that. If you're slouched or slumped back in the sofa like this, look at my neck. Neutral. I'm going to watch TV. Probably head's propped up against the pillow, and I'm looking to the side a little bit. A lot of the neck issues refer pain to no lower than the bra strap, but between the shoulder blade area. So Broner, I'd have a little think about whether it's the neck, because the bra strap isn't a lower back related issue. What else have we got here? Comments wise. I rest 2 or 3 days, hip hinge or squat, is that good? Yeah, generally, Oscar, where you're at, I'd probably be doing like one hip hinge and one squat workout a week, really. But it's what are you doing on the other days? What are we doing with our client flow in the gym, right? Oscar, fitness trainer, you're working in a gym, what are we doing with our classes? All of that other stuff. Invariably, as you get back up to the level that you're at, doing 75 kilos on the squat for 10 reps, aggravation-free, which is great, by the way. Good work, steady work, but you got there. The ability for you to say to work, hey, I can't do that class because I've got a bad back, starts to drop. So what happens is we've made good progress, but now we're also doing a bunch of other stuff. Oh yeah, I'll take an extra client, I'll do an extra class, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, there's a lot more stuff. So have an honest evaluation and appraisal of what we're doing every single day. What is the brand of shoes, if you don't mind me asking, Michael? I don't mind at all. Don't mind at all, Oscar. We use the Vivos. These are the Vivo barefoot ones. They're just barefoot style shoes. That's pretty much what Laura and I wear. I do have some of the Vibram 5-finger toe shoes, but they are not particularly popular with Laura. So I don't wear those as much. But they're great. They're great shoes. Sinner said, Mike, why does the pain feel like it's burning in my upper lateral legs? I have an L4-5 disc bulge and moderate facet joint arthritis. It's been 2 years. That's just where we get the symptoms, right? Some people are going to get symptoms going down the side here. Some people are going to get tension down the side because the glutes and the TFL and those other muscles are affected because they're controlled by that section of the lower back. Other people, it's down the back. Some people, it's tightness. Some people, it's burning. A common one in the lower leg with sciatica is a burning pain, like a rod in the shin here. Sometimes it's just a tingle in the big toe. It really varies from one individual to the next. Don't worry so much about the variation in symptoms. Of course, as long as we don't have the emergency symptoms, loss of bladder and bowel control, saddle anesthesia, all that kind of stuff, cauda essentially. Focus on the rehab and the information that you get from doing the rehabilitation work. Oh, I can't do a squat like this. Oh, my squat hurts when I do that. My hip hinge hurts when I get to this specific point of the hip hinge. That's the really important information that helps us actually change things. Paul has said, I'm struggling so much with sciatica, I can't form a hip hinge or squat. How do you work through the sciatica? It has been caused by herniated disc. Paul, that's literally what, how do you work through the sciatica? You're not working through the sciatica. So if your sciatica is a baseline, let's say the sciatica symptoms are a baseline level of 3 out of 10 all the time. Look at what you're doing every day in spite of that. We've already discussed that on today's live, so just bear that in mind, right? You're already doing lots of things in spite of the sciatic pain. So acknowledging that is like, okay, well, you can do your rehab in spite of the sciatic pain as well. But you want to also know what can aggravate and make it go from a 3 to a 7, right? I'm certain that you'll have some things that you know you can do that make it go from a 3 to a 7. So if you're doing your exercises, you are making sure that they are aggravation-free. So if you come into the exercise and you're at 3 out of 10, and you do the exercise and it's still a 3 out of 10, and you finish the exercise and it's still a 3 out of 10, that's fine. That's fine. That would be aggravation-free. Now the question is it correct choreography? If you got aggravation later in the day, that's irrelevant, right? Because you have to evaluate this in the context of your daily fluctuation. So with this sort of scenario, we're probably suffering quite a lot. And so we have flare-ups from here, there, and everywhere. We don't know what's happening. So if you get a flare-up like 3 hours after doing your exercises, but your exercises were aggravation-free, look at everything else you're doing. Don't be hyperly critical of the exercises, especially if we've done them properly, and we've been recording them, and we've been doing things like our members do, right? You focus on what you're doing from a technical standpoint, etc. How does this help you if you have a herniated disc? Specifically, how is it changing your body? Works in a couple of ways. So it's also important to note that you would be doing relief-based practices as well. But how this works is that, number one, when you are doing rehab, you are making technical improvements. That's the first thing. You're learning how to perform these movements, which means you are learning how to stabilize your spine better, which means you are learning how to protect your disc better, and that should be applied to activities of daily living. That can have quite remarkable effects quite quickly if you apply it to daily life. And so when you're doing that, you are decreasing the aggravation of your sciatica, the provocation of that herniated disc, with each passing day, because you're being more conscientious about how you're moving. So you're aggravating this less, so it can gather more momentum from a healing point of view. As you make progress on those same exercises, you're recruiting this musculature more coherently, but you're also challenging it later on in the program. And that builds more strength around here, which creates more resilience and protection for this area, so it can continue to go through that healing process. And then later on in the program, as you're adding load through these exercises and progressively more load at the right level, you will actually strengthen up these discs and the surrounding structures again. So that's how it works that's how rehabilitation work, using exercise like the squats and the hip hinges, works to progress you. Now, you're going to have challenges along the way. You're going to have things that are getting in the way, and that is the unique part of the process for each individual and why we have the members area to help you guys. Just looking through some more of the comments here. Guys, we are getting towards the hour mark, if not just past. If you're not already in the program, guys, if you're on TikTok as well, if you need more help, check out the link up in the profile page, because I know there's tons of comments on there, but we've been so busy on YouTube, I've been going through all of these. Guys, if you're watching this on TikTok and you need more help, definitely check out the link in the profile page. Those of you guys on YouTube, if you're watching and you've been struggling for a long period of time, I got a couple more comments I'm going to be going through here before we wrap it up today, but I will post a link in the chat. And if you're watching this after the fact, later on today, tomorrow, whenever it is, then you can always check out the pinned comment, and that's got a link to the program. You can watch a video there, which will explain it a little bit more. Just looking back through here, where are we? Madeleine has said, how long approximately might it take to build strength and resilience? When would I get into phase 4? I have no idea. I have no idea what your starting point is, Madeleine, but it really depends. You won't. This is the thing. You don't know until you start the process. You don't know until you start the process, because you might really be very, very competent at actually these exercises. You can learn them very quickly and boom, we can progress faster. Now, muscles change. The best thing I can suggest to give you a kind of an answer on here is that technique, if you're practicing sincerely, and the fact that we're going to a chiropractor implies we're getting into a car and going somewhere every day, so we're already doing that, right? And that doesn't get you any better. The getting in the car to the chiro, I mean, or getting in the car and coming back. Technique can improve in a matter of minutes, hours, days, and weeks. Right? So you can improve very quickly if you're sincerely practicing this. Muscles change in a matter of weeks when you are exposing them to the correct level of strain. So you have to get to that point. Now that could take you, that depends entirely on how long it takes you to get the right technique down. And that's very individual. And you don't know until you start. The strengthening process, once you're at the right level, that's pretty programmatic, right? If you're starting on 5 kilos, it's going to take you a bit of time. Weeks to adapt to the strain, and you'll make steady incremental improvements. And then the spine itself, that changes in a matter of months. So you're not looking at getting into phase 4. Generally speaking, I would suggest you should be able to get into phase 4 in a couple of months, because phase 4 is where people spend most of their time, right? Phase 1, 2, and 3 is about getting people to the point safely that they can start actually doing the work, which you kind of begin really at phase 3, playing around with load in an appropriate manner, finding that right strength level, right? Phase 3 is all about having a strategy for Bear in mind on TikTok, it's just coming up to the this little thing to check I'm a human and not a robot. It will load eventually. So the work we're doing in phase 1 and phase 2 is getting us to the point where in phase 3 we can actually find the right load. The right load is the right load that challenges our muscles. And so that point is when the point of that week's muscles attacking weeks starts, if we've done it correctly. And then phase 3 and phase 4, we go on from there. Hafsa has said, edema and infection in my L2-3, I have pain on movement. Should I be doing the rehab work? I've recently joined your membership. Yes, you should be. I would just make sure that we have dealt with the cause or the source of that infection, Hafsa. I assume it is no longer there, the infection specifically. Stins has said, I have been having a lot of lower back issues, but now I have neck issues without anything showing on the MRI with the neck. Is this a normal feature? It can be, it can be. Most of the time when you've got a bad lower back, you're not doing too much every day, probably spending a lot of time like so. Flexing the neck for extended periods of time, creating a bit of a strain on the neck there. Oscar says, does collagen help with lower back healing? If you're taking adequate protein, like Lara and I take a collagen supplement, which also has some other stuff for joints. And I certainly, with jiu-jitsu, I noticed when I stop taking it, my fingers and joints start hurting a little bit more because they get battered during jiu-jitsu. So I certainly notice a difference more when I stop taking it than anything else. And so yes, but there is no point, guys, wasting money on a collagen supplement if you're not getting the adequate protein intake from your diet. Get your diet right first, and then we can look to these other things as well. Hope that makes sense, Oscar. Diet first. I'm sure you'll be able to get the right protein intake. And then, yes, if you feel like you want to take one, by all means, they can be helpful. Would you recommend getting a massage gun? If so, does brand matter as they're pretty expensive? Jackie, yes, I think the massage, if there's one piece of kit that's worth getting, it's a massage gun. If it's a second piece, it's that cube that these guys do. And if there's a third bit, if you've got the space and you've got it's a bit more expensive, an inversion table are pretty cool, providing you're obviously going to use them correctly. If you're going to buy an inversion table and not use it, then that's going to be a waste of money. TheraBody are the ones we use. We use the TheraGun. This is what we have at home and in the clinic. This is about 650 pounds, or was when we bought it. This is about 125 pounds, or maybe 129 now. They do basically the same thing. This is more robust, it's got some extra features, but for you guys, this would do the job. They also have a mid-range model, which would probably be the best investment, I would suggest. This is unnecessary, you guys. It's also a bit heavier, so it's harder to do on certain areas where you have to reach if your arms aren't as strong. I mean, I don't think it's a deal breaker, but something like this, especially coming up to Black Friday, guys, you're going to get these probably about £100, $100 or thereabouts. When you think about how much it costs to have a massage and the fact that you can use that daily and it's useful in all stages of the recovery process, they're so worth it. And if it's absolutely too much of a stretch, you can get tons of really inexpensive ones. Sure, they're not going to last as long, but we've had members have all sorts of different ones over the years, 50, 60 pounds, and they'll do the job. They're not quite as good, sure, but it's better than nothing, right? What are some baseline exercises I should do once the pain starts to subside? The same exercises, big folks, you should do before the pain has started to subside. Just looking through some of these last questions, then we're going to wrap it up here, guys. We are going to go live tomorrow as well. So if you've missed it today, keep an eye out on the live page. Notice goes out to all the members as well on the morning when we schedule the event. But you can jump in and catch us there. Should I do all the exercises in phase 1 every day? Yes, goes on. Definitely get in the program. Follow the educational material. Follow the strategy material. Gongswo. I'm assuming you're in the program there because you're referring to phase 1. Go back in and revisit the strategy material and just get it down. And then if there's any additional questions on that, please do post in the members area and we'll go through it there. Madeline said, I won't lie, I'm scared because I'm worried that I will get more flare-ups if I start adding load. You just have to start where you start, Madeline. You start where you start. At the end of the day, you're willing to go to I'm assuming in the car to go to the chiropractor to have that discussion that you mentioned earlier. And so you're already putting yourself in an environment where you're putting much more load through the lumbar spine than simply standing there. That realization is so important. Stones has said, love your stuff. Love the way you explain things. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for the support. Madeline says, can you recommend some different decompression exercises than the bed one and the towel one? Not really, because those are the main ones. I think I'll finish here, guys, with one little caveat off the back of Madeleine's question. Often things like knee hugs and child's pose will be told they are decompression exercises. And what they mean by decompression in that scenario is you're just opening out this space here. That is not what we're trying to do when we do the towel in the bed decompression. We're trying to decompress the segment, not just bend forwards. Very important distinction that's often not appropriately explained. I have the small one, the massage gun. Is it okay? Yes, Oscar, the massage gun, the smaller one. I'm assuming you mean this one. Perfectly okay. The triangle device on this is like so much easier for getting behind the hamstrings and stuff and doing your back. Like it's a lot more ergonomic. Whereas the ones that traditionally look like a gun and you hold a handle, those are the ones we've always used, right? Hyperice is the other good brand. Therabody and Hyperice have always been, in my opinion, the two kind of like main leaders in this space. And just coming back to Therabody and using the triangle thing is really quite cool. And you can get them on Amazon anyway nowadays. Super easy. Guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. Hopefully that's been helpful for you guys on TikTok. If you haven't already, check out the link in the profile page. There's a video there that explains more about the program. And you know, if you need more help, if you've been struggling with for a long period of time. Sorry I didn't get to all the questions over on TikTok, but you know, we've had a lot coming in on YouTube, and that's probably the best place for you guys to jump over and join us next time. So thank you, and we'll see you guys next time. Those of you guys on YouTube, hopefully you found it helpful. If you've got any other questions, you're in the members area, get over there. I've already mentioned that to a couple of you guys on the live session. Give us a bit more detail. We can continue helping you out over there. And any of you guys, if you're not already in the program, check out the link. I've posted it in the live chat and in the pinned comment. There's a video there that explains a little bit more about the program, and you can join us as well. And for those of you that are in the premium membership, check out the email that went out earlier today about the Black Friday offer that has started now. So check it out. Thanks for joining us, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.